Could the NHL eventually expand to Europe and have a European division? It's an interesting concept, and I want to discuss an article today from Pierre LeBrun, contributor for The Athletic and NHL Insider, discussing that possibility. We'll discuss that coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned today, I want to discuss an article here from Pierre LeBrun, who's an NHL insider and contributor to The Athletic, discussing the possibility here that the NHL could eventually expand to Europe and have a European division of NHL teams. It's certainly something that's interesting to think about, and it's not the first time we've ever heard this subject brought up here, but I think as the game continues to grow globally and the NHL continues to have success with their NHL Global Series year after year, it's certainly a subject that I think is going to continue to come up, and many people around the NHL kind of feel that it's pretty well inevitably going to happen at some point in the future. Now, it may not be in the very near future. It could be still a little bit ways away, but I can see a time down the road, and hard to say how long exactly, when this very well could happen and it could work. On a recent appearance on TSN Leafs Lunch, Pierre LeBrun had a chance to talk with Bill Daly in an interview here and kind of pose a few questions in this regard. So now I'm going to take some snippets here of his article from The Athletic, put it up on the screen, and we're going to kind of read through here how this interview went and some of the main points. So here's the first piece of the article here that I wanted to discuss. It starts off saying, during an appearance on TSN 1050's Leafs Lunch with Dan Feshik and host Andrew Petrello, I asked Daly about the potential of having an NHL division in Europe one day. It was a question that had been raised by European media to both Daly and Commissioner Gary Bettman during the recent Jets-Panthers games over in Finland. Do I see it happening someday? Yes. Do I see it happening in the short term? Probably not, Daly said on the radio. There's a lot of factors associated with that. I don't think you can expand by just one or two teams in Europe. I think you have to have some medium number of teams that can play each other and make travel and schedule far more efficient than it would be with just one or two teams. The number of our players who are born and trained in Europe and add to the talent level of the National Hockey League, the interest in the sport, and a number of countries in Europe make it almost inevitable that at some point the National Hockey League will have teams in Europe. Hold on, did he just say inevitable? So he did say the word inevitable during this radio interview. So Bill Daly does feel like at some point this is going to happen. It's really not a matter of if, but when. Now, of course, as we know, the NHL is on the verge of expanding to its 32nd city, with Seattle likely being announced in the month of December after the NHL Board of Governors meetings. They're likely going to get approved for that 32nd franchise. Now, as we know, there's other markets within North America that are really antsy to get an NHL team as well and are pretty well ready to do so. I mean, Quebec City's had an arena for quite some time, even though the NHL seems a little reluctant to go there, calling it a smaller market. Plus, the Canadian-American currency difference as well is certainly a factor as well, with the prices getting steeper and steeper all the time for expansion fees, and with the Canadian dollar being devalued here compared to the US dollar, it does make it a little bit unreasonable, I think you can say, for Quebec City to get an expansion team. I do think if they ever get a team back, it's likely going to happen through relocation if the NHL ever decides to relocate any of their teams, more particularly any of their Eastern related NHL teams. Now, of course, as we know, the NHL is also kind of keen on getting to Houston. Houston has an established owner with lots of money. They have an arena in place, so there's certainly a very viable option in one of the bigger North American markets as well to not yet have an NHL franchise. So could we possibly end up with maybe 34 teams in North America before we ever see expansion to Europe? It's certainly a possibility based on what's been going on here for the last number of years in these other cities kind of wanting to get in on the action. As the first part of this article mentions as well, they wouldn't just expand by one or two teams to Europe if indeed that ever happens. It's likely going to have to be a big enough group to have a full division over there, which could possibly end up causing NHL to completely realign, its full divisions, conferences, or however it may end up going. But I would think they'd need at least 5 or 6, maybe 7 teams over there to make it happen. Now, of course, for the NHL to expand to that many teams at one time could also certainly make things complicated. I have no idea how they would kind of run an expansion draft or how that would work. That's certainly not a subject that we're kind of prepared to discuss here today, but it certainly would make things a lot more complicated. Obviously, the NHL has expanded by leaps and bounds in large amounts at one time in the past, but it's been a long time. It's a very different league right now, and it's a very different time. So hard to say how anything like that would work, but that's certainly a topic here for another day. So the article continues here. Says, consider for a moment a new NHL division in Europe with teams in Stockholm, Helsinki, Prague, Moscow, Zurich, Berlin, and or London. Dare to dream, people. Think big global games. Teams in London, Paris, Stockholm, Prague, Moscow, Helsinki. Good chance for big TV deals, said an Eastern Conference GM via text message on Thursday. There is that. TV money from Europe. Ask the IIHF how much money they get from TV every year for the Men's World Championship. Tons. So obviously, not only would it be good to grow the global game, but there's obviously a big revenue stream there that's really not being tapped into. I mean, I know I've talked to European fans of hockey and of the NHL on this channel through our comment section, and I know many of them find it frustrating how difficult it can be to watch a lot of NHL games over there. So it's certainly not the most successful product over in that part of the world, even though hockey is extremely popular in many of those countries. It's something that's as big and natural as it is over in North America. So certainly, from a revenue standpoint, a major opportunity to really grow the league and grow the game. Now, of course, with extra money comes more money in the players' pockets, more money in the owners' pockets. So I think getting the NHLPA and the owners both on board for a project like this is certainly, makes a lot of sense that they'd both be interested. Now, the article goes on and kind of starts to discuss some of the obstacles or potential issues that would need to be overcome to make this successful. It starts here, it says, now the obstacles for this dream to become reality are lengthy. Travel, the most obvious stumbling block. The European sports fan generally isn't used to spending the kind of dollars on games that we're used to here in North America, so that's a big hurdle. There's a long history and tradition of professional hockey teams in Europe and Russia that would most likely not be welcoming to any of this as well, not to mention some excellent leagues in Russia, Sweden, Switzerland, and others who would also not be fans. Where would the IIHF stand on all this? Would it back the NHL or would it oppose it? Can the 32-team NHL, including Seattle, expand by another division of teams and not suffer too much dilution of talent? So that's another big question to raise as well, is if the NHL expanded to Europe and added that another big group of teams, would the level of talent be too diluted to make the game, less fun to watch? So that's another big question. As the article also mentions, there's some other professional hockey leagues over there. I mean, you get the KHL, you get the SHL, leagues in Switzerland, Germany, not to mention others as well, who likely would not be real crazy about this because they very well, could take from their leagues as well, or could we possibly see any kind of merger? I mean, I don't know how those leagues are all doing financially. I don't follow them close enough, but the limited knowledge I do have of those leagues indicates that they seem to be doing relatively well over there, so not sure anything like that would be on the horizon, but certainly a major stumbling block for sure, and it's hard to say exactly how the IIHF would feel about all this as well. Here's the next section of the article I wanted to show you here as well. It says, yes, going to Europe would be a long-ass trip, especially for teams on the West Coast, but as Daly alluded to, the European expansion would not be one or two team endeavor. If you're the Anaheim Ducks playing 5 games against 5 different teams over 12 to 14 days, that doesn't seem like a waste of time. And maybe each team has 2 of these trips each year. Obviously, for the European NHL teams, it's much more of a chore in terms of the number of games they'd have to play over North America. But I would suggest they'd be the last to complain given the chance to be part of the world's top hockey league. There are all kinds of ways to work around the travel/schedule issues. Obviously, as this article mentioned, the travel concerns are certainly something that would be brought up, but again, it also goes on to mention here that referencing the NHL Global Series, how some of these teams have traveled over to Europe to play games and been able to come back, get adjusted, and are given plenty of time to do so and extra time for the travel, with the big difference in time zones, etc. They kind of get themselves well situated, have time to come back, get practiced up and all that before they resume their schedule. So I don't think that would really be too much of a concern. So given the fact that the NHL has a high number of European players already, I'm sure they likely would be in favor of this type of expansion, an opportunity to play back in their home country or at least in their home continent, be able to stay closer to home. I'm sure for a lot of them that's important. Many of them do end up coming over to North America and end up living out the rest of their lives here, staying where they played hockey, enjoying retirement life, etc. But many do retreat back and go back to Europe where they originally came from. So it's hard to say, but you mix that in with probably a decent number of Canadian American-born players that will likely be on board. I really don't see there being much resistance from the players here for an opportunity to be part of a global game with high quality of talent, and really, like most players, just want to be able to play in the NHL. So obviously, if that means more opportunity and more money, they're likely going to be in favor of that. As I mentioned, certainly an interesting concept. I wanted to raise this article with you here today to see what everybody else out there watching this thinks. Do you think the NHL going to Europe is certainly a possibility, and is it something that you would be in favor with? As I mentioned before, we're likely going to have the 32nd franchise here in Seattle, granted within the next few weeks as we approach the month of December. We have a couple other markets here in North America, like I said, like a Houston or Quebec City, not to mention a couple others as well. So, could we possibly maybe get up to like a 34-team league, expand to Europe, and maybe see a 40-team NHL? I've seen other concepts before between YouTube videos and other articles I've come across here on the web, and kind of outlining different scenarios like that. I'm not sure if I've seen one with a European division. However, I've seen many proposals for a 40-team NHL, and there are some people out there that think they can make it work. Obviously, it makes bigger money for the league. As long as the talent level is not too diluted, it certainly could be a possibility, and I can certainly see it, maybe happening for sure. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think of all this. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section, and we can continue the conversation. If you're new to the channel here, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button as well. I'd really appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.